Tom Miller hated diplomatic functions. As he stood in the corner of the massive crystalline hall on the Galactic Council station, he adjusted his too-tight collar for the 100th time. Being an assistant to Earth's ambassador meant attending these boring events, but he usually managed to stay invisible. Not today. The hall buzzed with conversations in dozens of languages, while representatives from over 50 species mingled. Floating service drones carried trays of peculiar drinks and foods that were mostly poisonous to humans. Tom had learned that lesson the hard way during his first month on the job. "Miller, make yourself useful and deliver these documents to the Mantid delegation," Ambassador Wilson said, shoving a data pad into Tom's hands. "And try not to cause any incidents this time." Tom sighed. Last week, he had accidentally stepped on a blob ambassador's sensory tendril. The poor creature had made sounds like a deflating balloon for hours. The Mantid delegation was easy to spot. They towered over most other species, their green crystalline exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial lights. Their reputation as one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy was well earned. They were also known for their strict social hierarchy and complex cultural rules. As Tom approached, he noticed something odd. One of the mantids stood apart from the others. While most mantids had sharp, angular features and dramatic spikes protruding from their carapaces, this one was different. Her exoskeleton was smoother, almost rounded, with an iridescent sheen instead of the typical metallic glint. The other mantids seemed to be deliberately ignoring her. Tom made his way toward the group, planning to hand over the documents quickly and retreat. But as he got closer, the unusual mantid turned suddenly. Their eyes met. Time seemed to freeze. Her eyes were unlike any he'd seen in a mantid before. They were a swirling mix of gold and violet, like a nebula captured in two perfect orbs. Tom found himself staring, unable to look away. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Every mantid in the vicinity froze. The unusual female's antennae twitched rapidly, and a series of clicking sounds emerged from her mandibles. The other mantids began making loud chirping noises that their universal translators rendered as expressions of shock and surprise. "The human has proposed," one of them announced loudly. Tom blinked. "Eyed what?" "He has chosen Lady Carax. Through the sacred ritual of the eternal gaze." "Wait, no, I was just..." Tom tried to explain, but the commotion was growing. More aliens were gathering around, and he could see Ambassador Wilson pushing through the crowd, face red with either anger or panic. "The marriage is witnessed and binding," declared a large mantid with elaborate markings that indicated high rank. "This is a historic moment for our peoples." Tom's mind raced. Marriage. All he'd done was look at her. How was this happening? Lady Carax stepped forward, her movements graceful despite her unusual appearance. The universal translator crackled as she spoke. "I accept the proposal, as is my right under the ancient laws." The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers, clicks, whistles, and various other alien expressions of celebration. Tom stood frozen, still clutching the forgotten datapad. Ambassador Wilson finally reached him, grabbing his arm. "Miller, do you have any idea what you've done?" "I just looked at her, sir." "You maintained eye contact with a female mantid noble for more than 5 seconds. That's their most sacred form of marriage proposal." Tom looked back at Lady Carax, who was now being congratulated by various diplomats. He noticed how other mantids kept their distance, even while offering formal words of blessing. "Sir," Tom whispered, "why do they seem uncomfortable around her?" Wilson's voice dropped low. "She's considered, well, by their standards, she's their equivalent of incredibly ugly. That's why this is such a shock. Nobody expected her to ever receive a proposal." Tom Miller, who had woken up that morning as a simple diplomatic assistant, was now married to a member of mantid nobility, apparently the ugliest one in their empire. And somehow, this was only the beginning of his problems. The next morning found Tom sitting in Ambassador Wilson's office, surrounded by holographic displays showing news headlines from across the galaxy. His accidental marriage was apparently big news everywhere. Human to alliance strengthened by surprise royal marriage. Lady Karax finds Lovi with exotic alien. Diplomatic assistentes career takes unexpected turn. Stop pacing, Miller. You're making me dizzy, Ambassador Wilson said, watching Tom move back and forth across the office. The situation isn't as bad as you think. Not as bad. Tom stopped and stared at his boss. I'm married to an alien I just met. How is this not bad? A knock on the door interrupted them. A tall, manted diplomat entered, his carapace decorated with official markings. I am First Speaker Rital. I bring news about the union between our peoples. Tom slumped into a chair while Wilson took charge of the conversation. As per our traditions, Rital explained, Lady Krax has already moved her belongings to the human embassy section. She awaits her husband there. Tom's head shot up. She's here. Now. Of course. Marriage cohabitation must begin immediately. Rital's antennae twitched in what might have been amusement. We are most pleased with this development. Lady Krax's unique appearance had made finding a suitable match challenging. About that, Tom said carefully, why exactly is she considered, unattractive by your standards? Rital's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Her smooth carapace lacks the proper angles for light refraction. Her size is below average, and her coloring is distressingly iridescent rather than metallic. Most shameful is the absence of threat spikes. She appears almost defenseless. Tom tried to process this. What the mantids considered ugly seemed more like subtle differences to his human eyes. However, Rital continued, her bloodline is impeccable. She controls significant trading routes and has authority over 3 mining colonies. This union will be most beneficial for Earth-mantid relations. Wilson shot Tom a meaningful look. The message was clear. This accidental marriage might be a diplomatic goldmine. After Rital left, Tom found himself being escorted to his new quarters. The apartment had been quickly modified to accommodate both human and mantid needs. Lady Krax stood by the window, the starlight playing off her unusual iridescent carapace. I apologize for any distress, she said, turning to face him. Her translator made her voice sound almost musical. I understand this is not how humans typically begin marriages. It's not how we typically begin conversations, Tom replied, then worried he'd offended her. But Krax made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. You are honest. Good. My people rarely speak directly to me, except when required by protocol. Tom found himself relaxing slightly. Because of your appearance. Yes, I am considered a disappointment to my lineage. She moved closer, her movements graceful despite what her people considered flaws. But you looked at me. Really looked at me. No one has done that in a very long time. Tom felt a pang of sympathy. I didn't mean to cause all this. I know, but perhaps it is not entirely unfortunate. She gestured to a table where both human and mantid foods had been arranged. Shall we begin learning about each other? I have many questions about Earth customs. As they sat down to their first meal together, Tom realized this might not be the disaster he feared. Krax was intelligent and surprisingly easy to talk to. Her questions about human culture were thoughtful, and she listened with genuine interest to his answers. By the way, she said casually, the Mantid High Council has requested our presence at a formal celebration tomorrow. Tom nearly choked on his coffee. Already? Of course, they are eager to display this new alliance. Her golden violet eyes sparkled with what might have been mischief. I should warn you, there will be dancing. Tom groaned. He had a feeling this was just the beginning of his cultural education. The Mantid celebration turned out to be both better and worse than Tom had expected. Better because Krax had spent hours teaching him the basic steps of Mantid ceremonial dances. Worse because he still managed to step on someone's foot claw during the third dance. That was actually quite good for a first attempt, Corax told him as they retreated to a quiet corner of the vast hall. Most non-mantids cannot even attempt the spiral of unity. I think I offended that elder with the gold markings, Tom said, watching the elder in question nurse his injured appendage. Elder Betak will survive. His pride is more wounded than his foot claw. Corax's mandibles clicked in what Tom was learning to recognize as amusement. Besides, he has been one of my harshest critics. A small injury might teach him humility. Over the next few weeks, Tom discovered that living with Corax was surprisingly comfortable. She had converted one room of their shared quarters into a study, filled with holographic displays showing various research projects. "You're a xenobiologist?" Tom asked one evening, watching her work. "Yes. I have 3 degrees, actually." She manipulated a complex DNA strand in the air. "My appearance made a political career difficult, so I focused on science instead. Humans fascinate me particularly." "Why humans?" "Your adaptability." She turned to face him. "Most species struggle to accept differences. Humans seem to embrace them. Your civilization has such variety, yet you find ways to work together." Tom had never thought about it that way. "We're not perfect at it. No species is perfect. But you try." She hesitated, then added, "That's why I accepted our accidental marriage so quickly. I had already been studying human culture. I knew you might be able to see past my differences." Their conversations became longer, ranging from scientific theories to cultural misunderstandings. Corax taught him about mantid history, while he introduced her to human music and art. One day, Tom found her watching an old Earth nature documentary about butterflies. "They're beautiful," she said softly. "Their iridescent wings remind me of my own carapace. On Earth, such colors are celebrated." "Yeah, we find those kinds of patterns beautiful." Tom sat beside her. "Actually, you remind me more of an opal. It's a gemstone that shows different colors when light hits it." Corax's antennae twitched with interest. "You find my appearance pleasing." "I find it unique," Tom answered honestly. "And the more I learn about you, the more I appreciate everything that makes you different from other mantids." Their relationship shifted slowly from awkward arrangement to genuine friendship. Corax helped Tom navigate mantid politics, while he helped her understand human expressions and idioms. "I still don't understand why humans say, 'It's raining cats and dogs,'" she commented during their evening meal. "Surely such weather would be catastrophic." Tom laughed. "It's just an expression. Like how your people say, 'May your carapace never dull,' as a greeting." "Ah, metaphorical language." She made a note on her datapad. "Humans use it frequently. It makes communication both more difficult and more interesting." As weeks passed, Tom noticed how other mantids began treating Corax differently. Her insights into human behavior made her valuable in diplomatic meetings. Some even started copying her more relaxed speaking style when dealing with humans. "You're changing things," Tom told her one evening. "People are starting to see past their old prejudices." Perhaps. Corax's eyes swirled with golden patterns, or perhaps they are simply adapting like humans do. Either way, it feels like progress. Tom watched the starlight play across her smooth carapace, creating rainbow patterns that would have been impossible on a traditional mantid's angular surface. He was starting to understand why fate or luck or diplomatic awkwardness had brought them together. Sometimes, the universe had a strange way of making things work out just right. 3 months into their unexpected marriage, Tom noticed something was wrong. Corax had become quieter than usual, spending long hours in her study analyzing data streams. Her usual enthusiasm for their cultural discussions had dimmed. "Is everything all right?" he asked one evening, finding her surrounded by holographic documents. "Someone is trying to invalidate our marriage," she said, her voice unusually tense. "Look at these legal documents being circulated among the High Council." Tom moved closer, studying the floating text. Even translated into English, the legal language was complex. "What exactly are they claiming?" "They say I was unfit for marriage due to my genetic deviations, that I hid my true status from you." Her antennae drooped slightly. But there's more, much more. She waved her hand, bringing up new documents. I've discovered something while investigating this. My appearance isn't just a random mutation. My entire bloodline was engineered generations ago. Engineered. Why? For space adaptation. Carax's eyes swirled with intense patterns. My ancestors were modified to better survive long-term space travel. The smooth carapace requires less maintenance in zero gravity. The iridescent coating better reflects harmful radiation. Tom felt his jaw drop. So you're not ugly. You're evolved. Precisely. But this information was buried. My family's enemies spread rumors about deformities instead. She clicked her mandibles in frustration. They'd been using beauty standards to hide the truth for generations. But why? What's so important about your bloodline? Carax brought up a star map. These are the trading routes and mining colonies under my family's control. They form a perfect network for long-range space travel, with the right ships and crews. Your family could control major parts of interstellar trade. Tom finished, finally understanding. And you're the last heir. Yes, my parents died in what I now suspect wasn't an accident. Her voice carried a hint of old pain. I was too young then to take control. The council appointed advisors who have been managing everything. Tom felt anger building. They'd been using prejudice to keep you from claiming your inheritance. And now our marriage threatens their control. Carax turned to him. Human marriage laws would give you partial rights to these holdings. They can't allow that. Tom started pacing, his mind racing. We need evidence, proof of the genetic engineering, the cover-up, everything. I've been gathering data, but many records are sealed in the ancient archives. Carax watched him move. Accessing them would be considered treason without council approval. Unless, Tom stopped suddenly, we had diplomatic immunity, which, as Earth's official representative in this marriage, I have. Carax's antennae perked up. You would risk your position to help me. You're my wife, Tom said simply. Even if it started by accident, we're in this together now. Over the next few hours, they formed a plan. Carax would request an official review of her family history, using Tom's diplomatic status to gain access to the sealed records. Meanwhile, Tom would work through Earth's channels to investigate the suspicious circumstances around her parents' death. This won't be safe, Carax warned, as they prepared to rest. My enemies have significant influence. I've learned something about manted culture, Tom replied with a slight smile. Family honor is everything. And right now, you're my family. Carax made a soft clicking sound that her translator didn't catch, but Tom had learned to recognize as her equivalent of emotional appreciation. As they settled into their separate rest areas, him in his bed, her in her crystalline regeneration chamber, Tom realized how much had changed. 3 months ago, he'd been terrified of this arrangement. Now he was preparing to help his alien wife uncover a generations-old conspiracy. Life, he decided, had a strange way of working out. Sometimes the biggest accidents led to the most important discoveries. Tomorrow, they would begin their investigation. For now, both human and manted rested, while somewhere in the station's upper levels, their enemies were already planning their next move. The ancient manted archives were housed in a crystalline tower that spiraled up through the space station's central core. Tom and Carax stood before the massive entrance, their diplomatic passes ready. Remember, Carax whispered, we only have 2 hours before the council's daily session ends. The archive keeper, an elderly manted with faded markings, examined their credentials with suspicious eyes. The human wishes to study manted genetic history. For Earth's Xenobiology Department, Tom said smoothly, using the cover story they'd prepared. We're particularly interested in space adaptation genetics. Inside, the archive was a maze of crystalline data stores, each containing thousands of years of manted history. Carax moved quickly, her scientist's training helping her navigate the complex system. Here, she said finally, connecting to a data crystal, my family's genetic records. As they downloaded the information, Tom kept watch. The archive keeper had been making regular passes by their section, each time lingering a bit longer. "Cracks," he whispered. "We've got company." 4 large mantids in formal armor had entered the archive. Their carapaces bore the markings of the High Council's security force. "Take this." Cracks pressed a data crystal into Tom's hand. "Whatever happens, get it to Ambassador Wilson." Before Tom could respond, the security force surrounded them. "Lady Cracks," the leader's translator crackled, "you are accused of treason against the Mantid Empire." "On what grounds?" she demanded, standing taller than Tom had ever seen her. "Attempting to access forbidden records. Conspiring with aliens to reveal state secrets." The guard's mandibles clicked menacingly. "Come with us." Tom stepped forward. "As her husband and an Earth diplomat, I demand to accompany her." The guards exchanged looks. They couldn't deny him without risking a diplomatic incident. During the walk to the council chambers, Cracks whispered, "The crystal contains proof of everything. The genetic engineering, the trade route plans, even records of my parents' ship's sabotage." The High Council chamber was filled with mantids of every rank. The ones with the most elaborate carapaces and sharpest spikes sat in elevated positions, looking down at Cracks with obvious disdain. "You dare to question our traditions," one council member demanded. "Your very appearance mocks our standards of beauty and power." "No," Carax's voice rang out clear. "My appearance proves our species' greatest strength, our ability to adapt." She activated a holographic display, showing the genetic data they'd discovered. "My ancestors weren't deformed. They were pioneers, modified to survive deep space. While you cling to old standards of beauty, you ignore the very adaptations that could help our species expand further into the galaxy." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Tom noticed some younger mantids nodding, especially those who worked on space stations and ships. "And what of your human husband?" Another council member sneered. "Was this marriage part of your plot?" Tom stepped forward. "Our marriage was accident, but it showed me something important. Where you see ugliness, I see innovation. Where you see deformity, I see evolution. Cracks isn't just beautiful by human standards. She's beautiful because she represents your species' future." The chamber erupted in clicking and chirping as mantids argued among themselves. Tom noticed more and more of them gathering around Cracks, especially younger ones, and those with slight variations in their carapaces. "Perhaps," a very old council member spoke slowly, "we have allowed our aesthetic prejudices to blind us to practical advantages." Cracks raised her head proudly, her iridescent carapace catching the light. "I claim my family's holdings, not to control them, but to use them as they were meant to be used, to help our people reach further into space." As support for Cracks grew in the chamber, Tom watched his wife transform from an outcast into a leader. He realized that true beauty wasn't about appearance at all. It was about having the courage to be different when difference was needed. The old standards of mantid beauty were about to change forever, and it had all started with one accidental glance. News of Carax's stand before the High Council spread quickly through the Mantid Empire. Within days, hundreds of mantids with non-standard features began coming forward, especially those working in space. "Another ship crew has declared support," Tom said, reading the latest reports in their quarters. "This one's been working the Outer Rim for 20 years. Their entire crew shows signs of spatial adaptation." Cracks was busy coordinating with her growing network of supporters. The old council members didn't realize how many of us there were. They kept us isolated, thinking we were alone in our differences. The movement grew faster than anyone expected. Engineers revealed designs for ships that worked better with smooth carapaced crews. Scientists published long-hidden research about space adaptation. Young mantids started deliberately modifying their armor to show support. "Look at this," Carax showed Tom a message. "A group of mantid artists is organizing the first beauty contest that celebrates adaptive features." Tom smiled, remembering how just months ago, Carax had been shunned at diplomatic functions. Now she was becoming a symbol of change. But not everyone welcomed the revolution. The door chime sounded, and Ambassador Wilson rushed in. "We have a problem. The conservative council members are calling for an emergency vote. They're trying to pass laws against unauthorized genetic expression." "They can't stop evolution," Crax said firmly. "No, but they can make life difficult for a lot of people." Tom stood up. "We need to do something big, something they can't ignore." Crax's eyes swirled with determination. "I have an idea, but it's risky." Her plan was bold. Organize a massive space fleet demonstration. Every adapted crew, every modified ship, would gather to show their numbers and strength. Over the next week, vessels began arriving. Ships of all sizes, crewed by mantids who had been hiding their adaptations for generations. They formed a massive pattern around the space station, visible from every viewport. The council chamber was packed when Carax made her address. "Look outside," she commanded. "Those aren't just ships. They're our future. Every crew out there represents thousands of cycles of natural and engineered adaptation. We aren't defective. We're evolved." Tom stood beside her as she spoke, noticing how many young council members were nodding in agreement. "Our empire was built on adaptation," Crax continued. "Our ancestors modified themselves to survive different worlds, different challenges. When did we start fearing change instead of embracing it?" The chamber erupted in discussion. Old guard council members looked nervously at the fleet outside, while younger ones openly showed support. "I propose a new council," Crax announced. "One that represents all mantids, traditional and adapted alike. Let us turn our differences into strength." The vote was close, but with the space fleet's show of force and the growing public support, the motion passed. The Mantid Empire would create a new governing body that embraced diversity. Later, in their quarters, Tom found Carax looking out at the assembled fleet. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "No." She turned to him. "But I am thinking about how much has changed. A few months ago, I couldn't even get other mantids to look at me. Now they're looking to me for leadership. Because you showed them that different doesn't mean wrong." Tom stood beside her. "You know, on Earth we have a saying. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who have to fight the hardest to be themselves." Crax's mandibles clicked softly. "Humans have interesting wisdom. Perhaps that's why you could see past my appearance from the start." "Actually," Tom admitted, "I think I was just too nervous about diplomatic protocol to look away." Their translators struggled to convey their shared laughter, but the feeling behind it was clear enough. Outside, the fleet of adapted ships glittered in the starlight, a testament to how quickly things could change when people found the courage to stand together. The revolution wasn't over, but its success was already written in the stars. 1 year after the accidental marriage that changed the Mantid Empire, Tom and Carax stood together in the newly rebuilt council chambers. The room had been redesigned to accommodate mantids of all forms, traditional and adapted alike. "Ready for the ceremony?" Tom asked, adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. Crax's iridescent carapace shimmered as she turned to him. "After everything we've been through, this should be the easy part." Today they would renew their vows, this time by choice rather than accident. The ceremony would mark the official opening of the Mantid Human Cultural Exchange Center, a project they had developed together. The chamber filled with an unusual mix of guests. Traditional mantids with their sharp angles sat beside space-adapted ones with smooth carapaces. Human diplomats mingled with mantid scientists. Young mantids proudly displayed mixed features, no longer hiding their natural adaptations. 1 year ago, Crax addressed the gathering. A diplomatic accident turned into something extraordinary. Not just for me and Tom, but for our entire society. Tom watched his wife speak, remembering how far they'd come. The being that others had once called the galaxy's ugliest alien now stood as one of its most influential leaders. "We learned that beauty isn't about matching an ancient standard," Crax continued. "It's about being perfectly adapted to your purpose. Every smooth carapace, every iridescent shell, every variation makes us stronger as a species. The old archive keeper, who had helped them that crucial day in the records hall, stepped forward to conduct the ceremony. Now he wore the markings of the new Progressive Council. Do you, Tom Miller of Earth, choose to continue this union, not by accident, but by choice? I do, Tom said clearly. And I promise to keep looking at you properly, Cracks, even if it gets me accidentally married again. The translator struggled with the joke, but Crax's answering click of amusement needed no translation. And do you, Lady Crax, choose to maintain this union under the new laws of our people? I do, she said, for showing me that sometimes the best things in life start with a simple glance. After the ceremony, they opened the new Cultural Exchange Center. The building featured architecture that blended human and mantid styles. Its first exhibition showcased the history of mantid adaptation alongside human evolution. Look at this, Tom said, showing Crax a group of young mantids examining a display about Earth's diversity. They're actually excited about different appearances now. Change comes quickly once fear is replaced with understanding. Crax watched as a traditional mantid elder explained space adaptation genetics to a group of human scientists. Though I admit, I never expected to be called a beauty pioneer. Well, you did start a revolution. We started it, she corrected him. Your ability to see past our differences gave others courage to do the same. As they walked through the center, Tom noticed something remarkable. The word ugly had disappeared from mantid cultural discussions. Instead, they spoke of adaptation, evolution, and purpose. The evening ended with a surprise. The High Council announced the creation of the Crax Miller Grant, dedicated to funding research into beneficial genetic adaptations and cultural exchange programs. Back in their quarters, Tom and Crax stood by their favorite window, watching ships of all designs move through space. You know, Tom said thoughtfully, I never did thank that elder who made such a fuss about my looking at you that first day. His outrage is the reason we're here. Perhaps we should send him an invitation to lecture at the center, Crax suggested, her eyes swirling with mischief, about the importance of maintaining eye contact in diplomatic situations. As they laughed together, Tom realized something profound. A year ago, he'd been thrust into marriage with someone everyone called ugly. Now, he couldn't imagine his life without her. Beauty, he had learned, wasn't about meeting someone else's standards. It was about being brave enough to be yourself, even when the whole galaxy told you that you were wrong. And sometimes, it just took one accidental glance to see that truth.